The northwest of England is home to Manchester and Salford. Famous for its boom in textile manufacturing during the Industrial Revolution, its worldwide cotton trade in the 19th century transformed this area with an influx of cotton mills and a complex network of canals, which were a vital lifeline to local industries. Entrepreneur, philosopher, historian, and most importantly social critic, Friedrich Engels lived in Manchester and Salford for more than 20 years. In this film, we discover what life was like for Friedrich Engels in Manchester and Salford, and how his experiences in the Northwest shaped his ongoing campaign for socialism. Engels first came to the northwest of England because he was summoned by his father, who co-owned a cotton mill factory called Oman and Engels, which was based in Weast in Salford.
Well, when Engels came to Manchester, he was already familiar with socialist thinking. He was already familiar with industrialization from the part of Germany he was raised in. And he arrived here in 1842 at the age of 22 and came at a time of intensification of class conflict in Manchester and Salford. I think when he arrived here, he was a very young man, of course, and he'd only just been converted to socialism. So he had expectations that the polarization of classes, which is something he could see, the militancy, which was something that was on display, would intensify.
Engels' father thought that working at the Salford firm might change his son's radical opinions and interests in liberal and revolutionary works. During his time here, Engels witnessed a typical cotton mill factory found throughout the northwest. In the heart of Manchester, the Science and Industry Museum has preserved the very machines that were used in the 19th century, and what the working conditions would have been like using them.
Well, we're here in the Textiles Gallery, and behind me is a collection of textile machines. These machines all would have once run in the textile mills of Manchester and Lancashire. So they give us a really great insight into what life was like in industrial Manchester in the time of Engels when he came to Manchester to work in his own father's textile mill. By the time Engels came to Manchester in the 1840s, Manchester was a booming industrial town and the textiles trade was at its heart. Thousands of workers toiled day in and day out in Manchester's mills, turning raw cotton into finished cloth. Meanwhile, merchants exported this cloth from Manchester out across the world.
During his time, Engels witnessed the working conditions in the cotton mills.
So mill work was hard, heavy labour. Mill workers would be working in hot, humid, noisy conditions, and these really took their toll on the body. Accidents were really common. Workers would be working with unguarded machinery, working long hours so they'd get tired. Machinery was incredibly noisy, so hearing loss was really common. So there were loads of hazards of the job that mill workers just had to deal with. Engels would have seen these working conditions firsthand for himself when he came to Manchester.
The innovative canal network played a vital role for the cotton mills, which were littered around Greater Manchester and Lancashire. And in these surrounding areas were the working class districts, which had very little sanitation and very poor living conditions.
Thousands of workers flocked to Manchester to seek work in its textile mills. By 1831, a population of 188,000 was double what it had been only 20 years earlier. So the mills really generated this huge population growth and this rapid expansion of this city. And it was something that people had never seen before. Because of this population explosion, there weren't enough decent houses to go around. So you had workers who were forced to find places to live in kind of cramped back-to-back houses or overcrowded cellars in places like Angel Meadow and Ancoats. So it really had an impact on the whole city because of all these people drawn to Manchester to find work in the textiles trade.
Engels closely observed the poverty-stricken workforce whilst working for his father's firm, but it certainly didn't agree with his socialist views.
Also, his involvement in socialist associations in Manchester is something which has been underestimated because a lot of this was almost undercover work because he was essentially the business manager of the Ehrman and Engels firm in Weast, and if you like, he was almost an undercover socialist by night. Engels was involved in, if you like, perhaps the origins of working men's associations in Manchester, in terms of the circles he moved in.
During his time, Engels wrote in the popular Chartist newspaper, The Northern Star, where he could express opinions regarding the workforce.
Well, I mean, Engels had to live two lives while he was in Manchester. His official life is as a representative of his father's interest in the firm of Ehrman and Engels. So he mixes with other industrialists, he mixes with the wealthy, many of whom are German, by the way. There's quite a significant German population in Manchester at that time. But he has this other life too.
While working in his father's cotton mill factory, Engels came across a variety of workers, from the highly skilled to the child labourers. During this time, Engels came across many fierce Irish workers from a working class background.
And one of those, of course, was Mary Burns, who became his housekeeper and long-term partner. And we think she played a big part in showing Engels some of the more inaccessible parts of Manchester and Salford. It was a serious relationship. It was neither of them was concerned to get married, to formalise it in that way. They were both opposed to that. Engels was true to Mary Burns, as far as we can tell, until she died, and it seems that he was heartbroken when she died. So it was a very close relationship.
To further his knowledge and understanding about the working conditions across the industry, Engels visited Chetham's Library, which is the oldest library in the English-speaking world. Here, Engels studies the industrial progress and the working class experiences, looking at statistics and accounts from the labour force. From his observations in Manchester and Salford, Engels published a book in 1845 named The Conditions of the Working Class in England. First published in German, this publication by Engels explores the staggering human cost of the Industrial Revolution in Victorian England.
Well, the book, The Condition of the English Working Class, has survived. It's still a book read now. It's regarded as a classic of urban analysis. It's one of the first in the field, in fact. Many people had been to Manchester because it was the shock city of the age. It was a vision of modernity. So although the study is detailed, it's empirical, it's based on close observation, it's also based on official reports, Engels is interested in what is of lasting significance. And he's talking about not this particular urban working class, but the working class in general. What he thinks he can see here is the shape of things to come. And he thinks what he can see is that an homogeneous working class is being formed, de-skilled, reduced to a very basic condition of life. He thinks he can see evidence that no sense of public good is likely to survive under these new industrial conditions.
After leaving Manchester in 1844, and after the publication of The Condition of the Working Class in England, Engels becomes more established amongst the scientific socialists. His relationship with Karl Marx flourished, quickly becoming friends as they continued from here on in to exchange ideas regularly. In 1851, Engels returns to the northwest of England, working at the textile mill owned by his father as an office clerk on Southgate Street. Today, at the Working Class Movement Library in Salford, they have a detailed scrapbook which is about Engels and his time in Manchester and Salford.
So this is the scrapbook that Roy Whitfield put together on his research into Friedrich Engels and his time that he spent here in Manchester and Salford in the 19th century. And it's crammed full with documents and maps and photos that tell us about Engels' life here in the city, and where he lived, and the places that he worked, and where he socialised. So this is Hyde Road, where Engels lived with Mary and her sister Lizzie. And there's a description here of the house. It says it was a small house consisting of a front parlour, 3 small bedrooms, and an outside toilet. So we've got a map here showing the Oxford Road area, And this is where Engels would have lived, worked and socialised. And you can tell from the map how busy this place was and how bustling. There's a whole range of places, banks, gymnasium, educational places, housing. And this is where Engels would have spent so much time living, working.
After his 20 years' experience in Salford and Manchester, Engels left the northwest of England to join Karl Marx in London, where they developed what is now known as Marxism. Engels went on to authoring and co-authoring several publications, including the second and third volumes of Das Kapital after Karl Marx's death in 1883.
People have assumed that Marx was the lead figure in this relationship. A lot of people know that Engels supported Marx when he was in London financially. In fact, he supported the whole family because he was an industrialist and had plenty of money. But I think people have generally underestimated Engels' contribution to political thought and political economy.
And today, you can see how Manchester and Salford have evolved since the end of the 19th century. The Industrial Revolution shaped this landscape, but Manchester and Salford are now considered the northern powerhouse.
Engels' contribution to socialist thought as a political economist is very, very extensive and really extends across the whole world. Within socialist circles in Manchester, which have a long tradition and history going right back to the Peterloo Massacre, there was a feeling that Engels really needed to be acknowledged, and this is something at Salford University which we've taken on board because there's a statue, Engels Beard, or a sculpture, which is right next to the School of Arts and Media and Digital Technology, which was unveiled, I think, just a couple of years ago.
To honour the former resident, Friedrich Engels, the Engels statue was erected in 2017. This 1970s concrete sculpture was relocated from the Ukraine. It is now located in the heart of the capital of the Industrial Revolution. After spending over 20 years in Manchester and Salford, Engels championed the working classes, and with a number of publications, his legacy is still relevant in today's society.